Hello, today you will learn about customer discovery. My name is Melissa Byrn. I'm a life science executive and instructor in the National Science Foundation I-Corps program. I've coached over 100 startups who, like you, want to make sure that the solution or product they're designing meets the needs of their customer segment. Today we'll go through some successful strategies for how you can perform thorough customer discovery. Customer discovery requires discipline and time. If done well, this process will help to make sure that the product, service, or solution you're designing actually meets the needs of your customer segment. When founders skip this step, unfortunately, they risk spending time, capital, and sometimes risk their business in an effort to try to understand product market fit. In a recent survey of the top 20 reasons why startups fail, a mismatch between the solution that a company was offering and the needs of the market was the number one reasons why startups fail. I hope today you're ready to dig into this process to make sure that you really understand your customer and get your business started on the right track. Customer discovery interviews are just one strategy you can use to really understand your customer. You've likely seen and understood and maybe used some of these other techniques. We focus on customer discovery interviews because they're the most thorough and unbiased approach to really learning about the needs, behaviors, and desires of your customer segment. There are 4 stages to the customer discovery interview process. Step 1 is designing your interview questions. Step 2 is finding your customers. Where are these people who represent your customer segment who you can talk to? Step 3 is reaching out to those individuals to request a customer discovery interview. And step 4 is the interview itself. We'll go through each of these steps in more detail. Step 1 of the customer discovery interview process is to develop a set of questions that you will ask each individual interviewee. The purpose of setting questions ahead of time is to make sure that you're spending your time with that individual wisely. You want to make sure walking into the conversation, you're going to get the key information out of that conversation that you really need to understand your business and your product and your customer segment. So step 1 is designing a set of interview questions. These should be open-ended questions that help you understand how your customer behaves, feels, and interacts with product solutions or technology around them. You want to make sure that you're testing your underlying business assumptions. I'm sure you have a set of hypotheses about who your customer is. Where do they go? What do they like? How do they make purchasing decisions? What do they use right now? What do they wish they had? The customer discovery interview process helps you either validate or invalidate all of those assumptions. So you want to take your hypotheses and design a set of questions to test those. Let me give you an example. If I believe that price is the driving factor for decision making for my customers, I'll want to design one or more questions to be able to test this hypothesis. That question may sound like, tell me about a time when you recently purchased a product and what were the driving factor or factors in your decision-making process? Now, of course, I want to make sure the product I'm asking them about is somehow related to the solution I'm trying to develop, but that should give you a sense for how you want to map your assumptions to a set of interview questions. Finally, make sure they're open-ended. You don't want to ask people simple yes or no questions. We're trying to pull out information from your customers and really understand them. And you may learn more information than just based on the questions you've designed for that conversation. Don't lead with your idea or solution. You really want to make sure that you're taking advantage of the time and learning about them. They're not here to learn about you or the solution and the way you're thinking about the problem. So don't interrupt that unbiased approach by leading with your idea or solution. And it's not a script. This is a guide, so be ready to have your questions in mind and walk into the conversation ready to adjust the order or the types of questions you want to ask based on the person who you're interviewing, their expertise, and how the conversation is evolving. You'll want to adjust your questions over time based on your interview experiences. So this is really a first step in getting ahead of thinking through what's the key assumptions you need to test in these interviews in order to get the value you're looking for from understanding your customer. One strategy for developing interview questions is to focus on a pains and gains model. Pain-based questions focus on your customer's pain points, problems, or risks. These are really critical because they'll help reveal for you what is motivating them to change behavior or try a new product or solution. On the flip side, gain-based questions are really about understanding what motivates or drives your customer. What's the value that they're looking for, and what do they respond to in terms of value? Again, these can be powerful tools in understanding whether your solution can help to meet those gains that they're looking for. Now that you have your set of interview questions, the next step is to find your customers. This means figuring out where your potential customers are spending their time and interacting with one another already. We call these watering holes. Watering holes are locations where a large set of your potential customers are already engaging with one another or are engaging in a location. These can be physical locations or virtual locations, so it's up to you to learn more about them and figure out where these spaces are. The goal is for you to ultimately build your network to be able to connect with people who represent your customer segment. Sometimes you're already well plugged into this customer segment, particularly if you're designing a solution or a product that already meets your needs as a representative of your customer segment. In these cases, you should absolutely use the network around you to start with those interview approaches. However, sometimes you're working on a product or solution where you aren't the customer and you may not already be well connected to those sets of individuals. In these cases, you will want to spend some time starting to understand where they're gathering and be able to start plugging into that environment. For when you are not well connected or when you've already tapped into your network, it's time to use warm introductions. This means asking people who you know to introduce you to individuals who represent your customer segment, and these are people who you don't know. Having this warm introduction to second or third degrees of connection can really help make sure that your outreach, which we'll talk about next, will be more successful. We always are willing to connect with people who know someone who we know. Now that you've figured out where your customers are, the next step is to reach out to them to request an interview process. This is step 3. So here are a couple of your goals. The only objective is to pique their interest and get them to agree to an interview. That means you should keep your messaging succinct. You don't need to tell them all about you and your product and why you're reaching out to them. Come up with a brief but catchy message that helps them understand why they should say yes to this offer to connect with you. You're going to want to experiment. A couple things to think of ahead of time. 1, don't sound like a salesperson. No one likes to respond to a sales email or a cold call. So you're going to want to personalize it a little bit. And you're going to need to be ready to adjust. You're learning about your customers. And so the more you learn about them, the better you'll be able to figure out what they're likely to respond to. This may be a response to an opportunity to connect with you as an expert, or to learn together, or to help save the world or make something better. Get to know your customers and evolve and adapt. If you don't hear from someone, maybe after 2 approaches, they're not going to talk with you. It's time to move on. The other thing to think about as you're practicing and evolving your outreach approach is that you should probably try the same approach around 10 times. If no one responds to it, it's time to adjust and pivot. On the flip side, if you start getting immediate responses, repeat that until you find that it's no longer successful with that customer segment. Again, adaptability is the key here. And finally, don't get discouraged. Outreach is tough and not everybody will reply to you. In fact, in my experience, people say that they have about a 10 to 30% response rate on their cold outreach. That means you're going to need to be prepared to do a lot of outreach in order to get a more limited amount of interviews. But it's worth it. This is all in an effort to try to make sure that you understand your customers and you're designing a product or solution that's going to meet their needs and be successful on the market. So here's a suggested format for your outreach. Again, adjust this. Get to know your customers and decide what works for you and them. But here's a place to start. Start with a brief introduction to you. Again, not your background or why you're so great, but help them understand a little bit about who you are and why you're reaching out to them. Next, personalize it. Help them feel like you're reaching out to them specifically. Make a connection to someone you know or reference something they've done or published or why they're an expert in this space. Next, frame up the topic you want to talk with them about. Again, this is very different than describing your solution or how you're trying to develop a business, but it's giving them a sense for what you want to talk about and helping them decide, am I in fact the right person for them to speak with, or should I connect them to someone else who may be better suited to be able to talk about the topic they're interested in. Then you should describe a little bit what you want from them. What do you want from them? An interview. So tell them that you'd love to talk with them and keep the time brief so they know it's not a huge time commitment and they're likely more able and willing to connect with you for that amount of time. And then give them an actionable next step. Make sure it's easy for them to figure out how they go from this initial outreach, that may be a cold outreach, they may not know you, into being able to connect with you. That could be giving them a link to be able to immediately schedule with you, offering them specific times, or asking them for someone who they can connect with to help with their calendar scheduling. Let me give you a more specific example. You might start out with, "Hello, I'm a student at the University of Chicago. William suggested that I reach out to you. I'm really interested in how patients engage with the healthcare system. I know you have great expertise in this space, and I'd love to hear from you so that we can figure out how to better connect patients to meeting their healthcare needs. I'd love 20 minutes of your time. Here's a link to be able to help us connect. Look forward to talking with you soon." That's brief. It tells them exactly what I want to talk about, and it gives them that actionable step to be able to say, "I'm interested in this, and here's how I go ahead and make that happen." You want to avoid the back and forth of more messaging, which can cause someone to start interested and then lose motivation to try to get time on your schedule. All right, step 4 is the interview. You've done all the right steps so far. You've designed a set of questions that you're ready to use as a guide. You've figured out where and how to connect with your customer segment, and you're ready to have this conversation. Actually, this is the most fun part. So you've put in all the work ahead of time. Now let your guide direct the conversation and just be ready to learn, listen, and capture some notes. When you start the conversation, I suggest that you reorient them to you and why you're having this conversation. Potentially a lot of time has passed since you first reached out to them. And remember, you're not already connected, so they're not going to know who you are walking into that conversation. So remind them that you reached out and what sort of problem you're trying to solve or topic you're really interested in speaking with them about today. You want to start your questions relatively broad, meaning you don't want to dig right into the finest points. This will help create opportunities for you to capture feedback, insights about your customer that you actually may not have prepared to learn in that conversation. So, for example, you don't want to start broad enough that you say, "Walk me through your whole day," when in reality, you may only be interested in how they grab coffee. So you would want to be a little bit more direct and say, "Tell me a little bit about your morning routine and, what that looks like for you and how you make sure that you're ready to start your day." Again, that kind of narrows the scope, but still creates opportunities for them to say something to you that might surprise you about them. Look for reactions or strong emotions in the conversation. This signals to you that there's something else to dig in on. So if you ask them a question and they seem really agitated or frustrated, you found a pain point and you want to learn more about what that is and what they're doing to try to solve that problem. And if, quite frankly, they have agency to solve that problem, it may be that you're talking to someone whose problem is not something within their control. In that case, you're not actually talking to your customer. You might be talking to an end user or someone in the value chain. In that case, you want that person to refer you to the decision maker or the person who does have the power to change that pain point or problem. However, again, emotions signal that there's lots to learn there. If someone's excited, figure out what's driving them or motivating them. And if that's something that your product or solution can align with, you found a good customer. Ask for stories where possible. Stories about what someone has done in the past or how they behaved really reveal behaviors, motivations, and true insights. Rather than asking someone to hypothesize about how they would behave in the future, you want to understand how they behaved in the past because that's how they're actually likely to behave in the future. So asking them to tell you about a time when or describe a situation helps you figure out what were the factors at play in there, what was going on around them, what was their role in that process. Again, you're trying to figure out, is this person representative of my customer segment? And if so, what can I learn about them that drives them, motivates them, or causes them to react certain ways? Remember, don't talk about your solution. This conversation is meant to be brief. You're learning about them, and they're not here to learn about you. If they're interested in how you're thinking about solving this problem, or they're really curious if you have a solution, ask to schedule a second follow-up and let them know you'd love to tell them a little bit more about how you're thinking about either solving this problem or creating this product. If they're really interested, I'm sure you'll secure that second conversation. And in that case, feel free to tell them as much as you feel comfortable about what you're working on. Ask for them to refer you to others in their network. Don't leave a conversation without asking them to name at least one more person who you should talk to. Once they get a feel for the types of questions you're asking, they'll likely either know someone in their company or in their network who they think might also have interesting insights to share with you. And you want to make sure to get those referrals. Ideally, they're going to make the connection for you. But if that doesn't happen, at minimum, you can name drop in the next outreach and let the person who they recommended you speak to know that you already spoke with their colleague, friend, or someone in their family, and that they recommended you speak with them. Again, using those connections is a powerful tool to getting second and third and fourth in 100 interviews. And don't forget to follow up with a thank you. People have offered their time and expertise and their insights, and that's hugely valuable. They also may end up being a customer in the future. And so the better you can use these conversations to really solidify that relationship, express your appreciation, and create opportunities for further connection, the better positioned you and your company are to convert that person who might be excited about what you're working on into a future customer. So remember to be polite and send that thank you note. Today, we focused on steps 1 through 4 of the customer discovery interview process. However, that's not actually the end. After you've had your interviews, you should make sure to analyze the information that you're getting from those conversations, revisit who you've talked to, and make sure that you've really connected with one or more customer segments to make sure that you're evaluating the right product market fit, and then repeat. Customer discovery is not something that has value only at the beginning or early stages of your company or your business building. Customer discovery is something you will do your entire successful career as an entrepreneur and a founder. And so getting used to this habit of seeking feedback from individuals who either could be your customer or eventually when you have a product on the market, people who are your customers, is a sound way to making sure that your company and your amazing idea are going to be successful in the long run. Congratulations on pursuing customer discovery. Good luck, and keep your mind and your ears open for those valuable insights.